DEF CON this year in Red Team Village, didn't you, I believe?
I did not speak at DEF CON this year, no.
Okay.
I would have loved to. But.
Something going on during that time or something, but I had seen your name out there a lot. So she's got a pretty interesting story that I think you all enjoy. A lot of the people that attend this meetup are people trying to get into security or offensive security. So that's a lot of the focus of this. So I think everyone's going to enjoy this. So whenever you're ready, take it away.
All right, I did try to keep that in mind. I would have liked to have gotten to some fun technical stuff, but I'm not sure how much of that was going to go over people's heads. So if we do have time, if anyone wants to nerd out on some fun things after, because I was telling the gentleman, I thought I only had about a half hour to speak, so I chomped my talk way down. But you guys get me for a whole like hour and a half or so. So we'll see what tangents come up along the way. Yeah, this is not really a titled talk, but I called it Paths to Pwnage because we are here at Pwn School. And my goals, so I'm not really going to give you guys, if you have heard me talk before, I'm not going to give you the regurgitate the story of my my path to pen testing in the traditional sense for you once again. I'm going to take a little bit of a different take on it just for you guys. Just kind of wrote this last week, so, and I did not time it, so we'll see how it goes. But my goal is to impart upon you the various places you can go in security and also in pen testing, because there are different flavors of pen testing and not very many people are aware of that, along with some of the cert paths you can take to each. Additionally, we will get into the how to get into pen testing from security and then how to get into security from other places a little bit. Additionally, pretty much all the advice I'm going to give you is based around my mantra of getting started fast, cheaper, free, because that's how I had to do it. You know, I didn't have company backing at first. I didn't have like access to a professional training budget where they were just going to pay for an OSCP for me. So, you know, I've had to get really creative with a lot of the resources at my disposal. So I'll be passing some of those on to you guys. And I didn't think we would have time to talk about practical pen testing, but we might. So depending on how bored you all get in the meantime, we'll save that for the end. So this is my about me slide. I don't like to talk about it a ton, but this is just some of the stuff I did this year. I've been a pen tester now for just over a year. My first day as a pen tester was October 1st of last year. So, and I had talked my way into that position after I had been a risk analyst for 3 months. So that's kind of what I'm known for. I'm kind of known as the chick who was working in InfoSec for like 3 months, got her Sec Plus in 2 weeks, and then became a pen tester. And in the years since I've been a pen tester, I've done a ton of jazzy things. All of these things, by the way, are things that are accessible to just about everybody here. None of these things were dependent upon anything that I've done as a pen tester or certifying myself as a pen tester. So except maybe the CyberShield thing. I really don't recommend participating in CyberShield unless you know what you're doing. But besides that, a lot of these are opportunities that are open to pretty much everybody. So a lot of people think that the path on getting into pen testing is a straight one, and it's very comically not. Honestly, the path to security and the path to pen testing in general is one of those ones that looks kind of like a crazy heroin ride. You'll kind of maybe start out and think that you know you're where you want to go in security, and then you'll find out something else and you figure out something else. And at the same time, you're trying to learn the certification for the other things. You're seeing how you can apply it in different ways, and you'll backtrack a ton of times and say you're not sure if this is for you a ton of times, and then you'll come back to it. And it just kind of ends up being this super crazy road, unless you're like me and, you know, 4 months in, you marry yourself to a job. But just know that there is no straight path into security. Security, you can get into security a number of different ways. And I really want to touch on this because I have so many people who tell me, I'm not sure if I can be a pen tester. Where can I go in security? And I'm like, there are so many places you can do security related things and not be a penetration tester. And there are a lot of different backgrounds that good security folks come from. Before I was in security at all, I was working full time as a social media manager for one of the largest hospitality brands in the world. I was literally in marketing. And then I went into risk. And then, so my path looked like this. I went from risk into the blue team. I was on the security team working as an analyst. Then I went to pen testing. And from pen testing, I got into web app pen testing, network pen testing, and purple teaming. And I'm going to go back here for a second, because a lot of people think that there are these barriers to entry to getting into these jobs. And that might be true to a point, because even if you've been as you can see over on the far left, if you've been in IT ops for a number of years, if you've been a sysadmin, if you've been a director, if you've been a number of things in finance or privacy or GRC, you still have been a professional of that thing your entire career, and you have not been thinking about security that entire time. So oftentimes, the only barrier to entry to getting a security-related job is the Security Plus certification. It's like the #1 thing HR people look for. It's like the #1 thing HR people equate with being a security professional because they don't know any better. And it's actually a cert upon which you can build a lot of other things because it puts you in that security mindset. So if you come from finance, or if you come from privacy, or if you come from internal audit, and there are aspects of working in all of those jobs that make you a perfect fit for security, really the #1 thing that's going to get you thinking about security in a data flow sense and in an overall, like a broad but shallow understanding of security controls and where we apply each thing in the process and why we have certain things at every level. Like that's a really good, I wouldn't say it's a fire hose, some people think it is, but it's a really good fire hose to drink from at first, because it's only going to tell you about networking components if you haven't been in IT, like I wasn't, in a security context. So it's not like you need to understand how a load balancer works. What you need to understand is the purpose of security that it aids, and it aids in the availability portion of security. So Sec Plus is a great gateway cert to getting into a lot of other places in security. In security, you can do a lot of things. You can go into digital forensics and incident recovery. You can do DevSecOps, which is like working with the devs and the coders and the architects and trying to make sure a product is as secure as it can be when it's released. You can be the InfoSec program manager, which is kind of like when the architect says, we need a SIM solution, you're going to go out and find one and talk to different vendors and manage those contracts. You're also going to be in charge of security awareness for your company. You're also going to be in charge of like the phishing assessments. But like this InfoSec security, the information security program manager does a lot of things, and it's a very large umbrella to work under. I used to work under one as the risk analyst. You can be an analyst of varying degrees. You can be a vulnerability analyst. You can be a security analyst, an incident response analyst, a risk analyst. There are tons of different analyst positions in security that you can do. Or you can go into architecture if you really, really love like network and design and stuff. There is a place for you in architecture, because as someone who just took that class, it's not my wheelhouse, and we need all kinds of people in security. Then you can of course go into pen testing. Now I did this diagram this way because I want everyone on this talk to understand that it's very hard to go straight into the red team before you've been a part of the security team, because there is no company who just has a red team hanging out before their blue team was like really, really on point. All the red teams come from the blue teams, because if your security is not up to standard, if you're still working on things like ISO or NIST or PCI DSS or whatever, and you can't get to audit compliance, you don't need an offensive security team to come along and test your controls, because you can't even get compliant to an audit kind of thing. So I was with my organization, again, for a few months, and we didn't have a red team position. The red team position opened up when we had decided while I was working there that our security had matured to a point where we were ready to take it to an offensive testing level. So it really behooves you sometimes to work your way into a company's security team or security program, because you can then be the person who evolves into the red teamer from that OG blue team. And then, you can go into purple teaming. Now I have this slide here because everyone thinks the barrier to entry to be a pen tester is to have an OSCP or a CEH. And I'm here to tell you, I don't have either one of those things. I don't have them for two reasons. One, they're both very expensive, and two, they're both very difficult. I got my start very fast, but I'm not someone who thought I could do this job for like 3 months and then go get an OSCP. That would be psychotic. So you don't need them to start doing this job. They definitely behoove you to have later on if you want to get into more graduated and sophisticated functions and methodologies of pen testing. Like as your blue team gets better and they implement better defenses and you need to work ways to get around them, those types of certifications are going to give you exposure on how to use the tools in new and creative ways. But you don't need them to start. So everyone knows that I started off with nothing but a Sec Plus as a pen tester, and that's honestly how it still sits, because thanks to COVID, I couldn't take a lot of the tests I needed to take, which had to be done in person. But also, you know, our professional training budget dried up. So I was told I was not going to get a GSEC or a GPEN or an OSCP or any of that. So I had to find a way to work with what I had in front of me, which is something that I'm really, really good. I'm really good at like repurposing and finding a more creative path and like living off the land. And that's something I try to teach to everyone that I talk to. So when I first started pen testing, I had no technical skills or knowledge whatsoever, basically. I passed my Sec Plus and thought I would try and teach myself Java, because I was like, don't pen testers have to be really good at a coding language? And I picked one, and that's how little I knew. I'm here to tell you, you don't need any of that. It's to be a pen tester, you do need to have technical capacity. So you need to have the academic aptitude to learn technical things, because you're going to have to operate in Bash. You're going to have to know how to operate in the CLI, and when you're trying to download tools or team servers are going wrong, or you can't access things on certain ports, and you're trying to get payloads off the ground, and people are just like, hey, do you mind just throwing up a web server hosting this real quick so we can pull it down? You're like on port 9000, you're like, what the hell does that mean? Like, one of the first things I was told to do my first month in the job was to host a team server tool out of AWS, and I didn't even know what that meant. I had to literally like Twitter Heath Adams and be like, what does he mean by spin this up and host this out of AWS? And, you know, I kind of got like my feet wet, really just learning how to install a tool and how to spin up an instance and all that jazz. So like the key things, you need a technical understanding, which is again, one of the things that I think Sec Plus will really give you. But more than that, you kind of just need to have like this ability to take something that no one's going to show you how to use it and just Google your butt off about it until you can figure out how to install it, where to host it, how to use it, how to start it, how to stop it, and how to fix it when it goes wrong, because it will go wrong. So, you know, for a lot of people trying to break into security, I tell them, you know, if you come from finance, if you come from privacy, if you come from marketing, you have skills that technicians don't inherently have and don't like to work on. Like, some technical people avoid public speaking like the plague, and you will never hear from them in meetings, and they don't want to speak up about anything. But that doesn't always serve them, because then no one knows where they stand on any of their projects. No one knows what their voice is, and they're honestly afraid to talk about their ideas. So if you're one of those people who's used to talking to people, or if you've got the tenacity, if you've got, you know, that plus the passion for security, like you've wanted to get into security for a long time, you're sitting in a really pretty place soft skills wise to complement your team, because they might need a face person. That's what my team needed. My team needed someone who would go to the meetings and say all the things to business managers in a way that they would understand it, because my team would start talking about the technical specs and they would lose their audience. So one of my skills that I brought to the table very early on was that even though I didn't have any technical knowledge, I could translate IT speak to layman speak and vice versa. So I was in a lot of meetings and I got my name out there, and people really got to know my face. And, you know, I got to know a lot of the managers across a lot of the different departments for that reason. So once I became a pen tester, which again, all I had to do, it was kind of like the right time in the right place for me. They opened up the pen tester position. I had already been working there. I was very, very new, but Reno is a very small town. So, you know, I was like, what is the bare minimum to interview for this job? And they were like, you have to at least have a Sec Plus. And I was like, I could do that, I bet. So I just went out and got one. I got my interview. I talked my way into the job. And I talked my way into the job by asking myself, if I don't know technically how to hack anything, what do I know? And in my meeting with my interview with the chief risk officer, I laid out everything I knew about security and about the company that literally had no relation to hacking whatsoever. But I told him, I can learn the hacking part. Like, I tell people this all the time. We can teach you to bash, but we can't teach you, you know, the passion. We can't teach you the learning. We can't teach you the soft skills. Those are things that all have to come from like you. And I had already been so passionate about the subject, and I was already looking into the things that would make me a better, well-rounded security professional, and like the, you know, the latest hot things that people were talking about and how we might implement them, that I was able to talk my way into a job. So, you know, that's from a marketing background, I played to my strengths. That's one of the things that I have going for me. You need to definitely identify what yours are and figure out how you can work those strengths to your advantage. So one of the things I told him was, I know who our APTs are. I know what our threat profile looks like. I know the major initiatives we want to get off the ground next year. I understand the part that I would play in those. And I told him basically I would get myself up to speed, and I did. So those are strategies I definitely recommend that you carry with you as you try to get into this field, no matter where you come from. This is something that anyone, no matter how technical or non-technical they are, anyone can do this. To pen test, you do not need anything on the left. You don't need the fancy certs. You definitely don't need the CISP. That's like basically the certification to be a CISO. You don't need to know Python. You don't need to know coding, and you don't have to have been working in security for years. It does help, kind of like if you're going to become a server, working as the hostess first really helps. And then like as a food runner and like working your way around the restaurant so that you understand where your job and everyone else's job fits into the flow of things. But it's honestly not required because I didn't do it that way. But again, the things that you do need are a desire to keep learning, because as Philip and, and Papa and I were just talking about, like, there's a new breach all the time. There are new vulnerabilities and new attacks to be wary of all the time. Like, as we get better, they get a little bit better. And then we have to be better. And then that drives them to be better. And so you kind of can't really ever stop. Like, I talked to a vendor the other day who was like, oh yeah, I saw that and I thought I could learn that. But I was like, honestly, I'm done learning new things. Like, they want someone to know that, they can hire someone new to know that, because I'm not going to go learn it. And I was like, that is career suicide. Please never, ever, ever be that person. If you don't love your job to the point anymore that you don't want to learn anything new about it, probably time to find a new profession. But there are so many exciting things to learn and so many places to go in this industry, especially in the world of pen testing and offensive security, where there's like malware and vulnerability research and like so many things that you can do that like you really can find the place for you. I'm like supremely confident about that. So as long as you have the desire and the passion is one of those things that's going to show itself on its own. You don't have to sit there and tell someone, I am passionate about security. I am a security evangelist. They will be able to tell very readily by how you talk about it and how you talk about, like, if you've never had a security position before and you're interviewing for one, you can say, I got my whole family using a password wallet because I don't want my family members to be the next people who have to post on Facebook that their Facebook was hacked. You are implementing security measures in your life, and there are things that you can do and projects you can undertake and things you can talk about that will demonstrate your experience and your passion for the subject. Also, another good thing to have if you want to be a pen tester specifically is really good writing skills, because I probably spend about 20% of my time actually hacking, and I spend the other 80% of my time writing my test plan really thoroughly, explaining my test plan, doing, again, the little bit of hacking, and then writing my report, and then defending my report. So as a pen tester, you're going to spend most of your time writing things and talking about the things that you write and explaining them to lots and lots of people. Just know that before you get into this career field ahead of time. Oh, okay. I put this slide in here because everyone who says that they want to start pen testing and they put that out there in the world on LinkedIn or on Twitter, people are like, oh, just start doing Hack the Box, or just start doing Try Hack Me, and just start getting it. Like, just start building the skills. And I just want you to know, I think that's as much of a BS answer as you do. If any one of us could just go to Hack the Box and know what we were doing and compromise all the systems and find all the flags, we would all be Heath Adams. Like, there would be no need for any of us to be here. That is the most non-value added advice someone can give somebody, because unless you know what you're doing there, and unless you already know like what the tools are and how to use them and the kill chain and how to put a compromise together, you're going to hack your way into Hack the Box and then have no idea what you're doing like 90% of the people that I talk to. So just know that that is not an intelligent way to get started. I do not recommend that you cold go to hackthebox.com and just do your best and see how you do, because you're going to get frustrated, you're going to get overwhelmed, and you're going to quit. Like me, I had a subscription for 6 months I didn't touch because I didn't know how to use it. All right, so the first things I did start learning. This is a curve. This is what I call the break-even curve. The point where I had to learn and I wasn't providing much value, to the point where I started breaking even and giving my company value back for having hired me. So, but it was like my learning journey. So over here on the left, when I was a pen tester, it was my first day on the job and I was technically the pen tester, but I had no idea what I was doing. I knew I needed to learn Bash because that was the main language that the CLI for Cali. Oh, oops, go back. No, back. Go back. I'm so bad. Don't touch your mouse pad while you're talking, people. I knew I needed to learn Bash because I was going to learn to hack with Cali first, and that is the main shell language for Cali. I needed to learn how tools worked. I didn't understand when people are like, we're going to exploit something with Metasploit now. I just come to the command line, I type this in, and you can see it's doing its job. I'm like, no, I don't understand anything that you're doing. I don't know why you're doing the stuff that you're doing, why you're typing the thing that you're typing, the action the thing that you're typing is doing, or the purpose that it serves. So I had to understand how hacking tools worked, how they worked together, what you do with that information that you get with one and put it in another thing or use it to your advantage. I had to understand team servers because my boss was all jazzed about Cobalt Strike and we just bought it. And he was like, stand up the team server in AWS. And again, I had to figure out what that meant because I didn't even know what those words meant that he was saying to me. I started out with like payload generators and understanding when you're using one and making one and executing one, what goes into that, and then which tools you use for which stage of a hack. Because someone was like, well, we're just going to go for it and we're just going to start out with Nmap. And I'm like, what does that mean? What I don't understand, like the knowledge you guys have behind these steps. I don't have that. You need to like dumb it down for me a lot. So I started out with those very, very basic things because I knew if I was going to get into using the tools that we had, I needed to understand like the why and the how that they worked first. I was also the person that when I learned IP addressing, someone was like, each octet goes to 255. And I was like, why? They're like, it just does, just accept that it does. And I was like, why? If you can't tell me the why behind it, then when you start manipulating it, I'm not going to understand where that comes from. So I'd have someone back it up to the binary, just so you know how my brain works. So I started learning those very basic things first. I got Linux for Dummies, and I started watching a few videos of people playing around with and failing with trying to install tools. So they were like, okay, that didn't work. I'm going to troubleshoot this thing with this. I'm going to try adding this command, which means try this. And it kind of got me understanding the syntax that when I was looking at instructions or other videos, I could at least keep up with the syntax they were typing. Then I started to learn my company's tools because I was like, I'm going to be the pen tester here. The number one thing I got to learn is how to use the tools that we have. So I started looking at YouTube courses and PluralSight courses and vendor offered training on BERT, Metasploit Pro, the vulnerability manager and scanner that we used, and of course, Cobalt Strike. And again, Raphael put out some great videos, but everything he was talking about, I was like, I don't understand what you're doing or why you're doing it or how you got to your end result or the part that it plays. So it was kind of one of those things where I had to jump into the deep end of the pool and just figure it out as I went along. But there's really a much more intelligent way to go about learning those basics. But I do recommend learning the tools that your company already has, because if you can go to your boss and be like, hey, you want to purchase something that does this, the tool we have has that capability. It's just no one knows how to use it. But if we could learn how to use it and turn it on, then it would already serve that purpose for you. And managers love it when you save them money. So that's something good to know. So once I understood the basics behind the tools, I understood the initial tools that my company wanted me to use. Then I started learning other relevant information pertaining to my job. I started hearing about MITRE and, there's obviously cloud and AI and all those other cool buzzwords, but I picked something that was like specifically aligned with my job function, which was offensive testing, because I was the first red teamer and I knew we were building an offensive testing program from the ground up. And I, again, wanted to start providing value back very, very quickly, is that they didn't feel like they hired someone who knew nothing and they were getting nothing for it. So I started keeping myself abreast of all these things and connecting with the people who were talking about those things and watching every webinar at every virtual con about these things, just so that like every BERT training, every Metasploit, every MITRE, and like if they were like, oh, today we're going to do some MITRE testing with burp, I was like, even better, you're tying two things together for me. And then I could take that, write down those steps, go to my boss and be like, hey, I can test for this MITRE tactic with this tool that we already have. I can repeat these steps. And then I look really, really cool. And like I'm not only good at my job, but I am advancing my job because I am tying his initiative to my job. So that was when I broke the curve and I started really grasping my position. And that was, if I started in October, that was in about December or January. So about 3 or 4 months into me being the active pen tester. Then I started learning, I started attending con training. So I went to Wild Wild West Hacking Fest, and I went to a few others, and I started getting, more advanced hacking training. And it was the first training I ever attended where like people who are having trouble installing the tool or getting the thing to run or using the VM, I wasn't having all those issues. I was like, oh, I finally understand enough that I'm able to troubleshoot my own thing. And I know that this installed in the wrong directory and I can just move it, or I can change the path. It felt so cool to feel like I knew what I was doing. And I learned threat hunting, and I got exposure to more tools, and I understood how they all work together and the why behind using those tools. Like a lot of people will just be like, well, I nmapped that thing. I'm like, okay, why did you nmap it? What did you learn? I don't know. It's just everyone says you nmap it first. I'm like, okay, if you don't know what you're doing with the information you're getting from that test, then there's no value in running that test, at least for you. So I got to the point where I was attending in more advanced trainings, getting more added to my repertoire. And then I was able to implement and design my own MITRE-aligned testing program that was completely my baby. And then I matured it, and I was able to develop more initiatives on top of that. Like now we have like YAML and Navigator JSON layer driven heat maps, like of our real-time dynamic coverage against like just specific APT groups that we're concerned with. It's really, really cool. So, I went from being this person who knew nothing, and I learned in an effective way so that I could start providing value back to my company by learning what was in front of me and figuring out what other supplemental things from the outside I could bring into the things we already had in order to look really, really good at my job. That is smart marketing, people. That is marketing yourself after you are already in the position, and not enough technicians do this. And those are the people who show up every day afraid for their jobs. I'm not afraid for my job, never. Okay. So some recommended resources for pen testing. If you're absolutely just getting started, you're not very technical, or maybe you are, these are some great things to start with. And if you want to hit me up for these slides, or I'll send them to Phil, or I'll put them out on Discord or whatever. But these are the things that I started with. These are the things that really got me to jump off the diving board and to really start understanding what I do as a pen tester. And then as a security professional, as someone who is going to manage their own career proactively, the types of things that I recommend that you use are career planners. I do have a list of resources that I put out a while back that I still have that I will give to Phil. That is, if you want to be a dev, if you want to go into infrastructure, if you want to go into cloud, if you want to go into the blue team or the purple team or the red team, I have got a list of resources for you to get started. Additionally, there are dozens of careers you can go into. We already covered that. But just make sure that whatever career path you choose, don't just go get the cert that everyone says, you need to have this cert to do this thing. Ask them why. Ask yourself what you're going to learn. Ask yourself the purpose that the curriculum for that certification serves you in the effort of becoming a professional that thing. Like everyone's like, if you want to be a pen tester, get a CEH. I mostly test web apps. CEH does not cover web apps at all. So if I'd gone out and gotten a CEH and then tried to be a web app pen tester, I would have been pretty screwed, because no one with a CEH knows what to do with a web app. And I'm just kidding. They all know their job really, really well. But like the curriculum itself does not cover, like CEH does not cover every aspect of pen testing. It's specifically for network and pivot pen testing. If you're interested in more of my soapbox on that, you can hit me up on Discord. Now, let's say you're in a position where you don't have anything to offer. You don't have any CEHs or OSCPs or Sec Pluses or anything else, and you're not even sure where to go or what you might like, or these are some things you can do. Look for jobs with analyst, assessor, or security in the title. That's going to give you a really good exposure to pretty much everything that that organization does in the effort of security. As the risk analyst, I thought I wanted to go into our GRC department, and then it turns out I went into the red team department. So as you're working as an assessor or an analyst, they're going to have you doing a lot of the low level, like aggregating and writing reports and attending meetings and stuff. And it's going to give you a really good exposure to where you might want to be in that organization's security program. Also, If you want to get into DevOps or IT ops first, I don't recommend it because it's really easy to get stuck there. But if you are going to start there, just make sure that you start painting yourself as the security person right away, and you have a quick plan to get yourself out of IT ops and into security, because they are not the same thing. Also, don't forget, the way to get the job you want is to succeed at the job in front of you. Do not tell people you suck at being a DB admin because you want to work in security and you're focused on getting into security, and so you only think about security, because no one's going to trust you with security if you can't prove that you can master being the DB admin. Just saying. Another thing you can do to move into security is to make yourself replaceable. Security mostly is doing some basics really, really well. Patch management, configuration management, identity and access management. Doing those things to the core really, really well. And a big component of that is documentation and standardization. Making sure that every time you make a new user in Active Directory, you do it the same way every time. How do you know that? Because you have a process that everybody uses. Everybody does it to the process. That's something you can be audited on. And it's part of the SANS, or not SANS, the CIS first 20, is to have standardization across these things. So the more you document and the more you clean it up and the more you standardize and the more you train people how to do your job just like you do it, the more likely they are to move you up and out of the position you're in, and likely into the position that you want to be in, because you are doing security things already with the job that you have. It's very effective, I promise. Oh, another thing you can do is network, get mentors, ask all the questions, even the stupid questions. I'm still not afraid to raise my hand and be like, I have what's probably going to be a pretty stupid question, but I still have it. And again, try to think creatively and ask yourself what you really need. Don't just go out and get the top 3 hardest certifications in your career path because everyone says you need one. Look at how far I've gotten, and I don't have any of the things people told me I need to do this job. I will now that I'm in a master's program, I'm going to have a CEH, but honestly, you don't need it until you need it. How do I still do this? Well, again, I needed a ton of certs this year. There was no money to get them. I'm a single parent. I don't have a ton of money to spend on OSCP and PWK and CEH and EC Council and all these things. So I said, well, what can I do? I can get a federally approved student loan. I found a master's program, which will give me 2 pen testing certifications. And I found out to get into that master's program, I don't need to have a bachelor's of science in computer science. I don't need to do a GRE or anything like that. The only thing I needed to qualify for the master's program I'm in right now is my Sec Plus, which I already had. So think creatively. Think smarter, not harder. I'll say it till I die. We're not going to spend a ton of time here. These are a ton of things you can do to start getting your name out in the security community and getting your name out there. This is how I recommend you get into security. Again, identify where you want to be and plan backwards using one of these. This is that career planning tool I talked about. This is my actual legitimate career plan right in front of you right now. You can see all the things that I've done, all the things I plan on doing next year, all the things I want to do just for fun, and how all of that is working towards a goal. If you realize a cert that you've identified that you want isn't working towards your goal, then it's not a cert that you need. So these are the kind of things that are really, really going to help you narrow down on targeted and effective learning and certifying without getting things you don't really need. This is also a super jazzy resource. If you're like, I know I want to work in security, but I have no idea where, this is the kind of thing that will tell you how many security jobs there are, what certifications they're looking for. This is literally how many job openings have the Security Plus listed and how many certified security, or no, the opposite. How many people have the certification and how many jobs are listed for that certification. So down here, there are a ton of jobs that need a CISP and not enough CISPs to go around for those job openings. This is a really cool website. It's sponsored by CompTIA. It's got a ton of great stuff in it. Additionally, you can do it backwards. I clicked on the heat map. If you explore a career pathway, you can say, I want to be a cybersecurity analyst. What are some ways I can get there? Yeah.
I think you just have it on your actual slide. So if you're showing something else, we're not seeing it.
You guys can't see what I'm sharing. That is so
No,
cool.
ma'am. I just see
So
the last slide you're on. I was like, it took me a second to pick it up, but yeah.
you guys, you got to speak up. I can't see what you see. Can you see it now?
Yes, ma'am. You're good.
Okay, okay, I'm gonna go back. This is a super cool website. CyberSeek. It's sponsored by CompTIA. Not only is there a heat map, I apologize, I just said all this, I'm gonna say it all again. This is the heat map that says what certifications they're looking for and how many job openings there are for that certification. So if you ask me how lucrative is it for me to get a Sec Plus? I mean, there are tons of Sec Plus people and not that many Sec Plus jobs. But for a CISP, there are not enough CISP people for all the CISP required jobs out there. You do still need a Sec Plus for a lot of things. But this is a really great resource if you're looking at a certification that will tell you just how relevant it is for employers, because it's actually listed on a job description somewhere. And this is somewhere you can come that you can say, I want to be a penetration tester. And on the left, it tells you all the places you can start to get there. I want to be an engineer. How do I get there? I want to be the admin. How do I get there? How do I be an architect? So this is a really, really cool website. Highly recommend it. And it also gives you salary, certifications, job openings right now for that thing. It's wicked cool. So past that, I think, oh, these are some things to remember. These are kind of like my 19 commandments. Again, I'm not going to go over them all, but they'll be in the deck, which I will make sure gets passed out to you. It's pretty much everything that we've already talked about. And that is actually the end. I'm going to inhale now, let someone else talk.
Yeah, awesome presentation.
I'm sorry, I had a lot of information to give you guys, and I thought I didn't have that long to do it. So I tried to chop it down.
Yeah, great talk.
Also, I have Dancing Dumbledore.
Someone said earlier in the chat, I'd love to hit you up for info on your MITRE-based attack program if you have a talk on it. I don't know.
My MITRE-based attack program, meaning like my MITRE-aligned offensive security testing plan?
They said yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, I can totally. LinkedIn is probably not the best place to hit me up. I definitely recommend tracking me down on Discord. But yeah, absolutely. I love talking about that project. It's one of my favorite things that I've made to this day.
Are you on any particular Discord servers, or you have like did you give out your Discord tag? I don't recall.
Last time I gave a talk, I did not have a Discord server. So let me open it up and nab my permanent link for you guys, and I'll throw it in the chat. What else? What else did I miss? Any other questions?
Someone just made a comment, said I really like this talk. It definitely was enlightening for me personally, coming from something totally different.
I'm glad. Yeah, you know, like just a year ago, I was kind of where you guys are. I was very new, and I was like, God, there's a whole mountain of things to learn. Where do I start? So I was in your guys' shoes not too long ago.
Yeah, I love it. I love resources like this. I love sharing resources like this because I very much still feel like a noob in the community. I think I mentioned earlier, I was a youth pastor coming out of college, and then pivoted into desktop support, not really knowing what I was doing, but just wanting to make some sort of technical pivot, and then had some really awesome opportunities to pivot into cybersecurity. So I was like you are right now, just cramming for all sorts of resources, just trying to be the biggest possible nerd sponge I could, soaking up all the available resources.
Yeah, and a lot of people ask me, you know, like there's an opening for help desk, which I could get right now. Should I do that? And I'm like, you can absolutely do that. Again, just keep in mind, try to start painting yourself as the security person. Try to start talking about security and getting people to make you the security go-to. Because actually a lot of people in IT ops don't like security, don't like thinking about it, don't like doing it. And sometimes it gets shoved onto one poor guy who's done something else for like the last 15 years. Now all of a sudden he's the security person. He has to know the ins and outs of security, and he hates it. So you might really work yourself into an advantageous position if you can say, I came from your IT department. I already know how your ops team works, and I have the drive for the security initiatives that you need in these 12 places that I've already identified just in like my 3 months working here. We could tighten this up. We could tighten this up. We could do this over here. And I mean, that's really how you start pivoting yourself out of like IT ops into the security team, which is still the blue team. Security is still the blue team. Security is not the red team automatically.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I found it weirdly interesting of how many people didn't want to do certain jobs when I was doing desktop. It's like, I found out no one wanted to work on Apple computers or anything Mac OS. I was like, I didn't understand why. I was like, it's just, you're going to pay someone, you know, $90, $100 an hour to come in on the side and fix our Mac computers. I don't understand that. It's like, put me in, coach, let me learn.
I used to be an IT recruiter, and I was like, they're going to pay this guy how much an hour to do this thing? I was like, where did I go wrong in life?
Right? Yeah.
Then I became one of those people.
Yeah, I find it weird how certain people just seem to settle for whatever they're doing. And that's just not my speed. Maybe I'm weird.
I did pop my Discord channel in the chat, by the way, for everybody.
Yes, very cool. Any other? I didn't check Q&A though. I was just looking at chat. Maybe I should check Q&A.
Oh, is there a Q&A place? So I could totally do that too and like be proactive.
Yeah. No, there is, but usually we just end up using the chat. Now there's nothing in there. Cool. I always forget to check both. Someone said I started as a security engineer position right out of college with a Sec Plus. So I'm Googling like 80% of my time.
You never stop the Googling.
Yeah, dude, welcome. Welcome to like all technical jobs.
You never stop Google. I think when I open a new Chrome browser, the 3 pin tabs are Stack Overflow, GitHub, and something else. I think whatis.com.
Yeah, for sure. I love fixing stuff in front of people when they ask me, and like, I don't even mean to do it sarcastically, but I Google search the question right in front of them because that's how I'm going to get the answer anyways. So, you know.
I've done that once or twice.
I don't do it out of spite. It's just genuinely what I do. So I guess they can just watch me figure it out from Google if they cannot.
Sorry, that was my 2-year-old.
I haven't seen that CyberSeek before. That's a cool resource to share. People are always interested, like what they can pursue first, and even the salary thing. I mean, that's relevant. That could be motivating to certain people. It shouldn't be all about money, but that sure could be motivating if you know that I could go from X job to this job. Maybe I need to make a lateral move, but I could be able to take, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years and be at this salary. That's a good move for me. Like that's worth the time of dropping salary or laterally moving for a year or two,
Yeah, and what I love is how they give you the feeder role. So if you were in networking, if you were in intelligence, if you were in finance, you can move into these places, and these have all the opportunity to move these places. And then it'll tell you like most requested education, the top skills requested, the top certifications requested. So like it'll tell you specifically the things you can learn to really paint yourself as like an expert in this area, so that when you go for that job, it's not even a conversation.
Right. Yeah, that's cool to know. Like, what's the time to value spent on certain degrees, certifications, or whatnot. Nowadays, I seem like I tell everybody to start at the Sec Plus. It just seems like the easiest flight to start is just get that Sec Plus, study a little Net Plus, maybe get the Net Plus if you feel like it. But
yeah,
if you can get the Security Plus, you should be able to find something intro to just maybe a little bit above intro, depending on your experience.
Well, and again, like I have someone I work with who failed the Sec Plus exam, and like she was scoring 90%, like 92s on all of her practice tests, and she knows the information, but she just is a terrible test taker, and she like kind of gets a little anxious. Mm-hmm. And she was like, what do I do now? And I was like, you tell people I still have all this knowledge under my belt. You can talk about security without a Security Plus. You can get into that interview and say, listen, like, the first 3 things I would do if I was given this job is I would check this documentation, I would see if this is actually happening. And if not, I would start documenting those processes, and I would make sure that they're repeatable, and I would make sure they were giving us the results we want. And then I would make sure we were seeing that reflected in this tool, in this dashboard, and we were getting reports out regularly to the people who want them. And I'm like, see how you're designing a security program around a scenario without a security plus? Like, you have this knowledge, you can go out and talk about it.
That's an excellent message. And, you know, even for me as a manager, you know, it's one thing to show you have that knowledge, and it's that passion and that hunger. That's the key thing right there for me. And that's the one thing, you know, as a hiring manager, it's what I initially am looking for. I don't care what certs you have, as long as you've got, and you can speak to the knowledge as well as having that passion and hunger to willingness to learn. We can mold you into what we need you to be at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, like, I don't take the certification test for every book I read. Sometimes I just read it to get that knowledge, you know?
Yeah. What are the things, if you said some of this in your talk, I apologize. What's some of like the hands-on type lab, whether it's home lab, cloud lab, or whatever? I know I think it sounded like you kind of just got it on the job because you got thrown into it and you're like, spin something up in AWS. Let me go learn that. Did you do any other things like outside of your day-to-day that helps you to learn on your own and get that? Like I tell people, like the most valuable thing that you can get right now, other than like getting a basic cert so you can get through the HR, you know, firewall, if you will, is to get experience, and simulated experience counts. It doesn't have to be on the job. It can be a side project, a lab, or whatever. So I'm curious what you did, or if you did anything outside of work.
I did, because just because I was fairly sure I had stood the tool up the right way doesn't mean the first time, like, so I POC test every new thing I want to do, and I have to give my boss the results. And even with Cobalt Strike, which, you know, was my second month on the job and brand new, and no one knew how to use it or what it did, I still, I watched Dale Meredith's Pentest Plus course on PluralSight. And in like the first course, he teaches you how to stand up a lab in VMware. And I literally did that. I literally followed his steps to a T, spun up like 6 hosts in VMware, like 6 Windows 10 hosts, connected them all onto a simulated network, and then tested my tool out against one of those hosts, because I did not know at the time how to like how dev works separately from QA, works separately from prod. I didn't want to really point it at anything real because I was afraid. So I did it there first. And honestly, it was such a good resource to have that little, and it was a mini lab, you know, it was all virtual. There was no meat behind it really. It was completely dependent upon my ThinkPad's resources, but it got the job done, because every time I did something new, like Metasploit or Burp, I had test targets that if I took them down, no one was going to get mad at me for it. And then as I got better and as I understood AWS more, AWS actually became one of those things that I learned so well that, like, you know, now I'm AWS certified. I helped write the CIS benchmark for AWS security. And AWS is just like my comfy place. I set up a test lab in AWS, and I can do that out of CloudFormation. I can, you know, stand up a stack in 5 minutes. I can customize it. I can host an infection monkey server out of there at the same time. I can separate them into different subnets. So really that lab experience was super invaluable, and it only came after I was told I was going to take the Pentest Plus. So I watched that Pentest Plus course path, and I figured out this is how labs work. This is how you make a lab. And that was really where it all the dots connected for me.
Speaking of cloud, I think I understand this in the chat. Someone said, I wish I knew about CyberSeek 5 years ago, but then someone followed up and said, would love to see one that includes cloud. I'm assuming that was in reference to CyberSeek. Do they have cloud-based security roles, or?
Does cloud have any security roles?
No, I think, unless they want to refine their question, I thought they were asking if CyberSeek had cloud security roles on it. Maybe I'm misunderstanding that.
Well, oh, those are 2 different people. So 5 security. So CyberSeek is super cool. They're updating it all the time. I don't think they have a ton of cloud in there. I think they have a little bit. Eric, you'd love to see one that involves cloud.
Yeah, that's one. I don't know if I thought he was referring
Like
to
a lab?
to
Maybe like a
CyberSeek,
lab
but
tutorial?
no, that was my lab question. I mean, I would like to see a CyberSeek version that included cloud positions. Okay.
That would be wicked cool. Maybe that's a suggestion you could make, or maybe that's some research you could start doing and send that to the good folks at, and then get your name on that product as a contributor. That sounds like a really good credibility marker. I'm just saying. Because that was honestly how I started. I started, doing the things that didn't require certifications to contribute to. And that's how I got my name out there. Like, you can just join a CIS benchmark community and start helping the editors write a benchmark. And then when someone says, well, what do you know about security? You can be like, pull up the benchmark on that thing. My name is on it. That's one of the coolest things you can say. I wrote
guerrilla self-promotioning.
Yeah, I'm a marketing background. I mean, the number one thing I got to be good at is marketing myself, right?
Yeah, no, that's good thoughts, because not everyone thinks in that manner.
Yes, Heath Adams, Castro. So one of the resources I mentioned, the complete ethical hacking course, I think it's still on Udemy. I know he also hosts it himself now. That is absolutely one of the resources I recommend. However, it's one of those resources that, again, if you haven't touched a shell ever and you've never operated in Kali, you're going to be like me. And, my boss was like, here's a Raspberry Pi, get Kali on it. I was like, what the hell does that mean? Like, I was trying to install the full-size image of Kali on a Raspberry Pi, y'all. It did not work. It's if you've never learned Kali, the first thing you're going to do is Google how to install Kali, because when he starts his course, it's already up and running. So you're going to Google how to install Kali, how to spin up a VM, or you can just download the VM image for Kali and open it in VMware. It's very easy. You don't have to toil like I did. But
I found that the easiest myself too, is just go grab the virtual image and spin that up.
I was so new that I was trying to do a blank one and install the ISO on it. You guys.
Yeah, I too tried to put on a Raspberry Pi, and I'm like, nothing works. I even tried the proper build for Raspberry Pi too, and still nothing works. I'm like, I'm just gonna install a Core OS like with Raspbian or something, and then install my own tools and see what works. But that's learning. That's
it is
how you do it.
And I'm one of those people that even on Dale Meredith's course, everything that was could go wrong in spinning up a virtual machine was going wrong. But I know so much more about it now because I've had to Google my own errors and troubleshoot it myself and work my way through it, that whenever I'm in a course or a lab and other people are having trouble, I'm the first person to be like, I can help you with that because I already did it myself.
Yeah, exactly.
You learn a lot when things go wrong. When things don't go perfect, that's when you learn the most.
Yeah, so the question in the chat, I've used VirtualBox as VMware free. So yeah, there's various versions of VMware. Like you can go all the way up to server where you're installing ESXi and paying for all that. And even ESXi is free up to a point. But VMware, I think they just call it VMware Workstation Player. They've changed the name, but the search for VMware Workstation Player is the free version.
And you can just get a new free license every 90 days, which is kind of a pain because you got to kind of nuke your environment and start over. But as you get really good at it, you'll get faster at it. It'll take you 20 minutes to put your lab back the way it was.
Yeah, and I was going to say you could use different automation tools and start learning yourself some DevOps, but VMware's turds and they make you pay for the add-on to
they do
automate some of that. So, VirtualBox is not a bad platform. You can feel perfectly fine using that. But
honestly, I host my entire thing out of AWS now because I spin the whole lab up when I want to use it and I spin it down when I don't. And then I'm just paying for root volume storage, which is 50 cents a machine every month.
Yeah, there's lots of alternatives. Like someone else said, there's Zen, there's
Ansible.
There's Zen and Ansible. What's the built-in? I'm brain farting on the built-in Linux version.
Oh,
KVM is the built-in hypervisor for Linux. Vagrant, yeah, Vagrant and Packer. That's what I was trying to do. Like, I was trying to do Detection Lab as a project that's out there that's pretty cool, and he uses Vagrant and Packer to stage up and then allow you to deploy his little full detection lab. It's pretty cool. You have to go look at the project, but that's where I learned that I couldn't use VMware. I had to use VirtualBox unless I wanted to pay for an add-on.
yeah. I would definitely say, like, where everyone's like, build a lab and get experience. Like, the home lab really is some of the best experience you can get, because you don't have to be afraid to essentially screw up and break it. If you break your whole lab, you can start over. But like, it really is a safety blanket.
Yeah.
I did a lot of my learning there.
KVM is what I said for the one asked in chat. I don't know if it's the Linux standard. I just know that that's what I've noticed from Linux platforms. We'll use KVM. There's another one out there too. I can't remember.
Yeah, to each his own hypervisor.
Right. It's Linux. There's going to be all sorts of flavors of all sorts of things out there. I think if you go like the CentOS, RIP CentOS, or the RHEL route, there's a different hypervisor they use, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I wanted to run Atomic Red Team on a Mac the other day, a standard image Mac for my company, and I had to figure out how to install PowerShell for Mac, and I was like, what is this? This is stupid.
Yeah, dude, they're trying. Microsoft's making that play. They're trying to play friendly with the PowerShell, like 6 plus, or what they call PowerShell Core.
Yep. So just 3 days ago, people, I had to teach myself something new and Google it from the ground up. It never stops, no matter how much you know.
I'm waiting for them to let Python be natively built in rather than making you stage out a
Also,
built-in.
why isn't Java 8 standard now? Why do we still have to install that separately?
Too many dependencies out there. No one wants it. Same reason Python 3 took so long to take a foothold.
Yeah, true that.
Well, we don't want to make her linger too long. Does anybody have any questions regarding the chat or just any other things for her? We could probably just sit here and dork out all night, but don't want to drag it on. Guess not.
I did kind of give them a lot of information. They're probably gonna.
Yeah, you overloaded them. They're all like it's like eating Thanksgiving dinner. They're all just in comatose.
That was how I opened my PivotCon talk. I was like, you guys only have 40 minutes to impart a lot on you, so sit back and take it in. Okay, well, if anyone thinks of anything they want to hit me up after on Discord, no promises for LinkedIn. LinkedIn gets a little overwhelming and I'm severely behind on those, but otherwise, generally pretty available on Discord. I'm going to be, what was that?
Are you on Twitter?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I'm not super active on Twitter, except for like probably the coolest thing that's ever happened to me in my life did happen on Twitter a few weeks ago. Keith Adams put out there, he's like, if I was hiring someone tomorrow, it would be me, Phil, or me, Joe, or some other gentleman whose name I forgot already. But like, really, Twitter's just kind of where we all dick around.
Agreed. Yeah.
But I'm there on Twitter.
Very cool. Well, thank you very much. Looks like a few people commented in the chat. They really appreciate it. A lot of great resources, made them rethink their lives, and other nice comments.
All right. If you guys are at a point where you're, coming cold into IT cold and you have no technical background, I've got recommended steps I take for that. If you're someone who's been in IT for a number of years, but you desperately want to get into security or pen testing, I've got some specific resources I recommend for that. So really, please don't be afraid just to hit me up. I'm happy to answer these questions all day long. My Discord is all people who are new, haven't had their first job in cybersecurity yet. So we're all there to share resources and ask the questions together. So yeah, literally anything you guys need, please don't be afraid to ask.
Very cool.
Yeah, thanks again. Awesome talk.
All right, guys. Well, then I guess that will sign off.
Thanks, appreciate it.